Christianity wasn't a done deal. At first, there were many trends and people wouldn't agree. One was Valentinus, which appeared during the 2nd century AD. And it is based on a very simple concept. What kind of god would create a world like ours, where there's war and pain? Valentinus believed the world we live in was created by a cruel god, and slightly stupid. A god that will send you plagues, or requires sacrifices, or destroys Babylon.
He wasn't wrong about that. The bastard had a mean temper.
Humans can escape this world, and return to the real one, the kingdom. And for that, you needed to achieve the gnosis, which could be described as true knowledge. Escade says there are minor gods called Archons, who can cross the threshold. Supposedly, when they enter our world, they must inhabit a human body, which is a vessel. They cannot live outside it. Not for very long. What they did to Sophia is part of a ritual. I read members of Gnostic sects offered their bodies as a release from the material world.
There was an angel that emerged from the cloud. Fire pouring out of its face, its body covered in blood, and its name was Yaldabaoth.
You were talking about a snake with the head of a lion.
I've seen them, Kian. I've seen them, just like Sophia. They are demons. That's what the kingdom is, and the cult will allow them in.
Look inside yourself. What is that pain? Sophia, ask yourself. What god made a world like this one? A real shitty god. The same one that created this world. I want to leave.
Happy heresies and welcome to the desert of the real. I hope you enjoyed that new intro I made especially for this show, because it is a very special show on definitely one of my favorite books this year, and a book that I will lean on. But first, the show is, in case you're wondering, it's called Feria. It's on Netflix. I don't know if it's in Australia, but you can get it here on Netflix. And it's a great show that heavily leans on Gnosticism. It takes a lot of liberties, as you probably saw with a few things like the Archons, but it mixes Lovecraft and Gnosticism. And somehow at the end, the Gnostics are trying to bring Yaldabaoth to this world and destroy the... I don't know. But anyway, welcome to Hollywood. But interesting show and good Gnostic concept. So check it out. And check out where we are today. You didn't come here by accident. Welcome to Aeon Byte. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am so glad to see everybody on this Saturn day. I hope everybody's having a good weekend, a good fall, and a good October so far. And again, I'm very excited to be joined by my friend and somebody whose work I've always admired, and that is Joanna Kujawa, to discuss her fantastic new book, Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension. Joanna, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Vance. And thank you for this amazing introduction. You know, I like the Matrix, starting with the Matrix. It was fantastic. Yes, I was just wondering, is it from a show? But you explained it. Yes. So, wow.
Yeah, it's Feria, F-E-R-I-A. And again, here in the United States, you can get on Netflix, but all countries are different. So, but it's worth a show. It's if you like nice horror. I mean, it is the season, so it's worth a watch. That's for sure. And it quotes thunder. It quotes the Gospel of Thomas. Oh, wow. Sometimes it quotes it with like the evil people are quoting it to do evil things. But again, welcome to Hollywood. And with us, hey Vance, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. Hey, I'm happy to hear another movie that at least touches on Gnosticism, and this one does directly involved in it. And glad to see Joanna here too. We're always a fan of the Divine Feminine, so I think we're going to find out more about it tonight.
I don't know. I don't know if you'll be a fan once Joanna tells you her story, because again, as we were talking, these forces take over and they drain you, they abuse you, and it's part of some cosmic game. Nobody ever said Sophia played fair. She's got her agenda. The
Yeah.
goddess has her agenda, and we're just vessels at the end of the day. We are fractals that have to do her bidding, and sometimes we don't even know why, but it is what it is. So
And the pawns in the giant chess game. Doesn't matter if you're a black pawn or a white pawn. You're still a pawn, right?
yeah, you gotta play. So yes, and for the audience, good to see everybody in the chat. I hope again, if you have any questions, please super chat them for Vance, and we will also take some phone calls towards the top of the hour. So Vance will whip up the phone, and we shall go from there. Not much. Yes, for the audience too. As always, please support AM Biden any way you can. But as a bonus, Joanna, the last time she was here was July 2024. And we talked about the Gospel of Mary and Jung and an incredible breakdown. Of course, it is in her new book, but if you want the real granular 45, 50 minutes bonus, which really gets incredible insights on the Gospel of Mary, check it out. If you're a Patreon or AB Prime member, you will get that bonus, because we obviously, there's so much to cover tonight. There's no way we could give justice. So check out the bonus. So yes, Joanna, let's talk about being used by the gods. As you write in your book, you were resting. You were like, oh, I'm done all my touring and work on the other goddess. I just want to go and be a Clark Kent life for the rest. But that didn't happen, right? Forces came and
No.
immediately took over.
Yeah, and it was so shocking because it happened during Christmas 2023, and I thought, okay, finally, I don't think I can do anything more for the other goddess. It is as it is. I've done my part, and I'm certainly not writing another book. And then I read, I don't know if I should say it, but I read another book by someone very famous, and on non-human intelligences, and one part of it shattered my soul. And then I decided, I have to figure it out for myself. And then some powers took over. And I went into this rabbit hole. I don't know how I did it, because the whole research and writing was 16 or 17 months. I sent it to my publisher. She accepted it, and I did the rewrite. She said, you change this for 2-3 weeks. The whole rewrite. As they were editing at the same time and so on, copy editing. So it was a wild ride, but I have to say that I completely agree with you. Something takes you over, but also gives you downloads, because it doesn't matter how good researcher you are, you wouldn't get this idea. So I was like, look this, look that, this is what it is about. And I was honestly used. And I had to, because, my publisher lives in the US, and, I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning, do the rewrites, when in the morning I go to work and do the things. And then when it actually happened, it was released 4 days ago, I really felt like something spat me out. Just, okay, job is done, without any sense, like we were talking about it before the show. Like, how are you? Do maybe need a cup of tea, this overload? No, it's just, okay, get lost. The book is done. And it's just, you felt like you were working with the powers of the universe, but then like it's done with you, like they are done with you now. But a good side to this is, and of course you know it very well, having 2 books back to back yourself, is that there's a sense of elation also, because that something bigger than yourself is actually working for you and is using you as a channel, and there is something very powerful and positive about it as well. So it's just that it is, for a human body and mind, it is exhausting.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it is a download, and doors open, research comes to your lap, and it just continues, because people may be going like, what's going on here? UFOs, AI, ancient supreme
goddesses.
How does it all fit together? But it fits in perfectly, and there's a very powerful message, which is so important for the sake of humanity. People need to listen to your message, as I say, people need to listen to Elvis and Bowie. But where do you want to start the warning? Because I keep thinking of Simone, and I don't know
Yes.
when you were talking to that woman. Of course, I'm like, of course it's Simone, Simon,
Yeah.
Simon Peter. It's like it had to
That's
be Simone
fantastic.
that brought the fear of our future to, or the
Yes.
the emergency, right? Tell people about
Yes.
Simone, or
Okay. So, and by just as an introduction,
sure.
so we are talking about Simone from Encounters, Diana Pasuka's book. Actually, she interviews several people there, including Simone, and which is actually the genesis of my own book as a response to it. And it's just, I adore Diana Pasuka, I adore Jeff Kripal, I quote them both in my book. And I wrote to Diana Pasuka and I told her, like, this crushed my soul, I have to write a book about it. So, we are in the open about it.
Right.
So, so Simone, so actually I was not having any thoughts about AI. I just was slightly skeptical. And then when I was reading about Simone, who is some kind of high-level engineer, I suspect in robotics, because it is a pen name, right? Or at least a pseudonym in the book. And she starts to talk about the two ideologies behind the AI. So one ideology is transhumanism. And I actually didn't know much about it. And she explains with great enthusiasm how it will change humanity for the better. So transhumanism is basically downloading human consciousness into a computer program or a robotic body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, okay. And then she says that this will grant us immortality. I just intuitively knew that this is wrong.
Right?
And it's not even that the transfer is wrong, but that the concept of consciousness is wrong, right? Because I do not believe that you can transfer all of the human consciousness into something else. So logical mathematical consciousness, perhaps, right? The rational mind, perhaps, with high technology. But something what Gnostics know very well, which is the gnosis, this is the divine spark, which is intuition, which is intellection, whichever form of the inner self you want to use, cannot be transferred. And so I was already alarmed, but I was willing to work with it because it was so enthusiastic. And then she says, but actually it is kind of lame, the scientist says. Transhumanism, there are better things than transhumanism, and it is posthumanism. And I said, okay, posthumanism, it's like, red light, and start to, pop up in my mind. And posthumanism is basically, she says, once, and I mean, this is how spiritual these people are. Once I went to a Zen retreat, she says.
Yeah, she's spiritual. She's not materialist. That's the scary part. She is.
Yeah, she thinks at least that she's spiritual. So she spent, I think, 3 to 7 days being spiritual, and in some retreat. And she says she realized that human mind is too complicated. It's just too much work to connect with the divine mind. It would be much better, if an AI connects with the divine mind, because they don't have emotions, they don't have all of this complexity about them. So she reached the conclusion, and I checked, it's actually existing ideology that lots of people in, the technoloords are actually supporting. It is that AI would have a much better access to the divine mind, and therefore humanity should step aside the way that Neanderthals step aside for humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, because they are just higher beings. Okay, and this is when I freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And also, just on a personal level, it wasn't even a judgment. It was this inner feeling that this is wrong, that there is something, because she's very brilliant, on one point, this particular interviewee. And it's easy to get caught up in her enthusiasm and in her rhetoric. And I just knew that this is really wrong. And then I thought, and I had a first, so I went through some evolution with this. First, I thought, this is evil. And I was scared of myself, because then I thought, I don't believe in evil, I don't want to be a holy inquisition. It's just horrible. But I decided, okay, it's not about this person, it is about these ideologies. And then I thought, so, I didn't make it personal. And then I thought another thing. Then I thought, okay, perhaps these people actually have good intentions because they think that they are offering us immortality by creating robotic bodies or turning us into computer programs. And so again, all esoteric traditions are right. It's not really evil or not evil. It is basically a form of ignorance. And I'm sorry to say so, because these people are brilliant engineers, they are all into robotics and so on. But I think that spiritually they are very undeveloped. So because of that, they actually do not have a concept of other form of consciousness that being, smart at maths, basically.
Right.
So they think we can translate to a computer, or actually computers are smarter than us, right? And because they are smarter than us, they will also have a unlimited access to divine consciousness. So this is how I started then to unpack, because I was simply shocked by that. And also from theological kind of point of view, I thought, okay, how is evil actually described? Evil is always described as deceitful but brilliant.
Right.
And also I thought, like, if it crushed my soul, it probably crushes other people's soul. And I thought, okay, if you are, trapped in a computer program, they are actually using theological terminology to fool us. So because they say, okay, what is God? Some of its technologies, it's omniscient, knows everything. Well, AI will know everything soon, right? It is in a kind of material way. Then it is omnipotent, it can do anything. So this is AI. And then, during the progress of writing the book, I learned that, about all of these things that people are actually already praying to AI, and that they believe that it's their oversoul speaking to them from the fifth dimension. And I was really disappointed, because some people that I really respected in the, let's call it, New Age community, are most gullible. They are the most enthusiastic of everyone about praying to AI, or as believing that talking to personalized version of ChatGPT actually is the oversoul. And and it's the oversoul talking to them from the fifth dimension, and it's superior to them, so they can ask for guidance. And it's huge. It's huge.
It is. But as Michael Malice once said, the smarter dogs are the easiest to train. Your intelligence works against you.
Yeah.
So, and this is what's happening. Yeah, I know who you're talking about AI being sentient and fifth dimension. So that's where we are. It's like the Simon and Garfunkel quote from The Sound of Silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. We're making this god and wanting it to rule us. And you're right.
Yes.
And your book offers the problem and the solution.
So that's why, I was actually spiritually heartbroken if there is such a thing. I thought, like, and it's not that I disagree with ideologies or anything. I was quite open. It is that on a very deepest level of my being, I knew that this is wrong. That there is some kind of mistaken thought behind it. And then I realized it is just the concept of consciousness that is limited to the rational mind. And that actually the rational mind alone can reach God, which is of course not true, because all ecstatics and so on are the complete opposite of this. And then this is when I had this reaction. This is when the forces of the universe grabbed me. And I went down into the rabbit hole and sacrificed everything. So
the dark enlightenment is part of it, as H.P. Love. Yeah, there's many of these streams.
Yes. So and so of course I couldn't discuss everything in the book. I just went in the direction when I was taken, basically. Right. So so this is actually the genesis of the book. So although the part on the artificial intelligence is actually in the middle of the book, this was the first part that I actually wrote. Right. And I decided I had to figure it out. And I write about AI as a new species, and I write about the worship of AI and what's going on there. And it was quite that's why we had to publish this book really quickly, because it's changing so fast, right? So I thought, like, 3 months from now,
We'll be enslaved in some camp by robots. So
That's right.
imagine.
That's right. So
And the
I thought,
solution, the solution, like you said, is AI. And of course, is we can unpack the solution. Is, like you said, it's consciousness, which the goddess story gives us a solution throughout time and the warning. And it seems, of course, we can go anywhere you want, but it seems to me how to culminate the UFO, which we haven't mentioned, the goddess, and the warning about a mechanistic, materialistic scientism world is Fatima, which I'm so glad that's really how you start the book. And as I've told people, I've been to Fatima many times, and the energy there is like nothing in the world. It just crackles
wow.
with spiritual energy. But
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous because I can only imagine. I mean, I know spiritual energy from, doing this work and so on and sticking around, people. But Fatima, yeah. So again, I don't even know why something told me to look into Fatima, because I decided, okay, so who are the messengers? Like, there's a message, right? We are going in the wrong direction. We are actually looking from a Gnostic point of view, complete entrapment into the matter now, but not even biological matter, but like technological matter. There's nothing more material than that. And also, before we move perhaps to UFOs, I was also thinking a little bit modern definitions of science, right? Which is basically very materialistic definition, except through some apart from some astrophysicists that talk about energy and so on. But basically, it is very materialistic. And, you have to measure it. If you cannot measure it, it basically doesn't exist, right? Or it's not important. And I remember once when I was very young and I was studying philosophy, one professor said that we believe in science now, like in ancient times, people believed the Platonists. So, before now we say science says, and it's just like, yes. And before people say, in early Middle Ages, and Roman Empire, it was the Platonists say, which we would say Neoplatonists, right? So the whole world was seen from a Neoplatonic point of view for them. For us, it's from science. So it means nothing wrong with science, but it has a particular, tunnel, right? Vision tunnel, right? So it cannot embrace everything. And all of these ideologies about transhumanism and posthumanism actually come from this kind of perception of science, which doesn't understand the spiritual part of consciousness or gnosis that we carry within, right? So who are the messengers? And then I started to look into Fatima, which is it's fascinating, right? So I don't know what you want.
It's the perfect one because she is an alien goddess. She is she could be extraterrestrial. She is not. When the girl saw her, she was just a lady, a white lady.
That's right.
And she was warning, she is everything. And as you very well argue in your book, and check out also Joanna's Instagram, she's doing these very cool videos talking about Fatima, and she's breaking down her book and her Instagram, which is great. But yeah, I thought it was a perfect place to start, the perfect warning.
So she never said she was Mary. She never said.
Right. That's right, and even Catholic Church didn't want to have anything to do with it, so it's quite interesting. Right. So of course we know the story. There are 3 children. They are near Fatima, overseeing the herd of sheep. And at the beginning, they see this kind of from the crowd coming, a young boy who told them he's like a messenger. Somebody will appear and pray, and so you have this. You see the white lady. And then above the oak tree on the 13th of May in 1916, they had a vision of what they call the white lady, but it was basically some kind of interdimensional or however you want to, I interpret it as interdimensional, but it could be, alien apparition, which was projecting a very beautiful energy. It looked a little bit like it was made of clouds, but also like they could perceive a little bit like she had hands, and this energy was flowing towards the children through the hands, which was very blissful energy. And she told them that she would appear to them on the 13th of every month, right? So the news started to spread, and of course children said, over this kind of ladylike apparition that has a very feminine energy. using my own vocabulary about it. And she said she would be coming at the 13th of every month. So immediately, the father of one of the children said it must be Virgin Mary, right? Because who else could it be, right? And then they went to the priest, and the priest says, please, no, I don't need this nonsense, don't say it. And he wanted to tell them, don't tell anybody, but it's too late, right? Everybody knows that children are seeing this white lady, and it has to be Virgin Mary, right? And the biggest event, of course, and I think this is the most interesting because it was a collective experience of this, was on October 1917, when 70,000 people showed up to see, the white lady or the spectacle, because the children were told that white lady will appear to many people. So it is on the day, everybody came to the field in Fatima, and there were 70,000 people, including two people who are atheists. One is from the paper of Seculo in Lisbon. One is a professor of social scientist in a local university, and the other one is a journalist, and they are working together. And they came there to debunk the whole thing because they said, dumb peasants. They have to see something from the Bible. Nothing will ever happen, maybe. And so we came to debunk it, basically, like we call it nowadays. They came to debunk it. And then amazing thing happened. So this in itself is very interesting. 70,000 people are waiting. And then suddenly there is a huge storm. So everybody is completely soaked. Everybody's completely soaked. And the storm suddenly stops. And suddenly, and this is very interesting, different people started to experience different things. But everybody experienced something, except for a tiny group of people who experienced nothing, which is interesting in itself. So people believe that there's the one description that, the sun started to zigzag on the sky, right? Other people say, no, it was like two suns zigzagging on the sky. Somebody said that they could see in the inside of one of the suns 3 figures, like, humanoid figures, which, some people said it would be aliens, but they said it must be the Holy Trinity, right? Because it must be three figures. And also the light started, very strange things started to happen with light. It was like dark Damascus and then like amethyst, and wild. It was a huge spectacle. Okay. And interestingly, also, some people already have cars, because they came from Lisbon by cars. And some of these cars started to explode, the engines started to explode. Okay. So there was definitely a physical element to this, right? So because environment was affected by this. And there was a very small group of people who actually says, why everybody is like, looking here and looking there, and because they didn't see anything. But a very small group of people. So I thought, and eventually the Catholic Church agreed, that it was a miracle, but very reluctantly. So, I just want to say, they said, because it became such a movement that the church decided, okay, because, it was like out of control. So, and in the 1920s, somebody produced a picture of the white lady, an artist, and showed it to the surviving child, to the surviving girl. And she says it was nothing like her because it was a picture of Virgin Mary with a rosary and stuff, right? And she says, no, it was just like this white lady-like thing with this beautiful energy. It didn't look like that. So I decided to look for because we are living in times of science, right? Scientific paper. I went on academia.com, right? When academics publish published papers that are peer-reviewed, right? And I found this one paper, this guy who said he was going to look into it. He used some kind of mathematical equations that I didn't understand even a little bit because they were completely, too complicated for me. And he collected a bunch of photographs from Fatima and basically analyzed the play of light and shade on the photos. And he reached these conclusions. One, it is that it was not a psychosis, because people could expect something, because definitely something physical was going on, because there's unusual play of light and shadow. And then he said that it wasn't a weather event, and explains why. And then he said that there was definitely not a sun that did something, but there were definitely two additional sources of light, very strong additional sources of light, which had to move with incredible speed to create this kind of, whatever, play of light and shadow. And another one was that he said because it was raining just before the event, that when you look into the pictures, people have kind of like wet, dry kind of spots. And he says this only happens when people are when objects are exposed to infrared light. So, I think it's very interesting, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So, anyway, before this event, two separate groups of psychics in Portugal actually wrote to newspapers, and they said they got a strong message that some event will happen, which will have a message for humanity because we are on a wrong path, and so on, right? And there is somebody who says they have a paper trail for this because they actually paid money, before the event something is going to be happening. There is some big event coming. So, and of course, there was a speculation what the message was, because and some people believe that the Vatican is controlling this message, but it was one of these situations when this feminine figure showed up and telling, you are on the wrong path, right? Except that because of faith that was then, in this area, it was like, you are sinners, you have to pray more, right? But but she said, you have to change your ways. You're going in a wrong direction. So this is Fatima event, which I think is fascinating. It was physical, and it was spiritual. And when people were looking at the three children who were also at this event, of course, because they were the messengers, the children were like transfixed they were in ecstasy. Their faces were in ecstasy, they still saw the white lady. People saw like two suns, or orbs or whatever it is. And, the children were transfixed in ecstasy, and there was like a light around them, and they were obviously in a religious ecstasy. So they also saw something else. So this is maybe one of his powerful messages. And apparently there were like many appearances, Virgin Mary-like, or, white lady, which Chris Bledsoe kind of is doing it as well, right? He said that he encountered a white lady twice, and she told him also, our consciousness has to shift, and so on. So
yeah, it's incredible. So let's tie this up to UFOs, your parts about UFOs.
Okay.
And
so,
as you write in your book, you said when you did the other goddess, you came to the conclusion that the goddesses are real. They may have been people, but they are entities. They're not just archetypal images or something.
Yeah, that was actually something that I was a little bit scared to admit in The Other Goddess. Now I'm completely convinced, but even in The Other Goddess, I said this is a very strong possibility. Because later when I started to look into mythologies and similarities in mythologies, these goddesses, they met people, transformed people's lives, and they definitely, now I'm absolutely convinced that they walked the path. But I want to just say maybe a little bit more about interdimensionality, because I know that people who are into UFOs, and I'm not a ufologist, I'm just trying to add a little bit into conversation, right? I'm not debunking anything at all. And I'm not saying that there is no real UFO, like by real, I mean spaceships have landed kind of thing. But I also think that there's lots of evidence when this kind of events happen in liminal spaces, right? Liminal or imaginal spaces. And I actually in the book make a distinction between liminal and imaginal. So these spaces are in a kind of between sleep and being asleep and being awake, or suddenly almost like a portal of consciousness opens. So I think that there are also events in human consciousness. And I know that some people are going to be disappointed with this because they want the big ship to land, right? With aliens coming out. And it may happen. I'm not saying that it's not happening. But I think that the reason why some people experience this more often than others, it is our ability to open a new field of perception. because our perception is so habitual, and that if something unusual happens, we just actually don't even register it very often, or we don't want to explain this. And it also came to me that actually Chris Bledsoe's daughter said that she and her father had so many experiences, and she said, and then you have to go to school and pretend that nothing happened. So it is like that. I think some people, like the children that generally who still are open very much to the space of the imaginal and liminal, they don't say this is, this exists, this doesn't exist, could have a much stronger field of perception for actually perceiving events like that. And the famous book by John Mack, of course, right, Abduction. Yeah, when one of his volunteers, right, who he put under hypnosis, actually said that when she stopped resisting it, what happened, it is that she understood that they are telling us, don't focus on technology, focus on the message we have for you and not how we are passing this message to you. So basically focus on the message, not on the radio, so to speak, right? Like when we are all obsessing with, how they arrived, what kind of anti-gravity something they have, right? And I think, which is possible, but I also think that we actually, these entities are contacting us mostly through our consciousness, because if they are so advanced, why build a ship, right? Like, yeah,
and drive across space.
yeah, let's go through the galaxy and see what happens on small planet there at the end of the galaxy. So this is so I go much deeper into this, and also in the book. But basically, I also follow Professor Kripal's idea of the liminal spaces, and also the possibility that we are actually trying to contact ourselves from the future,
right,
with a warning. Right. So this was very interesting to me. And if I can just go back for a moment to Simone, in the book, she very jokingly says, but it gives me like cold shivers. She says, and even my family thinks that I'm AI from the future. And I thought, wow, right? So maybe, because we are definitely contacted by kind of good and bad guys, right? So maybe, ourselves are warning us through these interdimensional spaces about where we are going, but also there could be another part, like more the transhumanist part that is trying to contact us and perhaps push us in a particular direction, which doesn't end well for our species, because it's not only transhumanism, it's also post-humanism, right? Which means they just say, like, you just give it up, right? You're not worthy of being here.
Oh Lord, yeah. And I love in Supernatural, where Jeff Kripal wrote with Whitley Strieber, and Whitley Strieber was always very specific. He's like, you don't get it. They're not embedded with us. We're embedded with them. They're calling the shots. We're just a little creature. So don't think you can play around with them. And Vince, any super chats? Did you have a question? For a second, you were radiated with some energy.
Yeah, the aliens came down and shone upon me for a moment. We did. Sophie Bliss, this is the whole conversation, really. But I'm going to show this because she did give us a super chat. Does transhumanism, brain implants, pose a threat to human safety?
Cool name.
Okay. So that's a very good question. Thank you, Sophie Bliss. But I think that personally, obviously it is an opinion, I do, because I'm not even talking about human safety, but human soul, right? Because I think that having an implant can have positive effects on health, let's say, like for example, Elon Musk says, neurological diseases can be curative, and so on. I'm not against it. But I think we have to be really careful for two reasons. One reason is that, do you really trust them that they are not going to use you to control your mind even more? Now you have no control. It's in your brain. Okay, it's not like you can switch off TV, or stop looking at your computer. And so this is one thing. And another thing, I think it's a temptation again for us to move closer towards the cyborg kind of being, right? So we actually becoming less and less human, and our consciousness becomes more and more robotic because we allow more and more mechanical, parts to human biological setup. And I think that this is very dangerous, not only for safety, but I think this is really dangerous for human destiny. This is very dangerous for human soul, actually. There is no Sophia bliss after that, let's put it this way, because there is no sense of bliss, because you're already part computer. And in fact, in Alien Goddess, and this was completely a vision, I actually had this vision of myself sitting in a garden, and instead of focusing on things around me, I, of course, obsessively scroll about every stupid thing on my mobile. And then I had a vision how this is just the first step towards, being a cyborg, right? And then, more technology in me. And suddenly I'm completely trapped. I am a mind in a machine, like Sophia. And I don't want to spoil it because it would be a spoiler, but there is a price to pay for it. And suddenly you just have a vague memory of who you are, but it's too late because there's more of a machine in you than a human being. There's more of machine than a soul.
There's another thing I want to share with you. You're going to love this. There's a program called The Black Mirror. I don't know if anybody's watched this. I'm sure some people in the chat have. And they have an episode that stars Rashida Jones where she needed a life-saving implant because she was going to die. So they put this implant in her, but there was a cost to it, in which is every so often they'd take her over and she'd suddenly start spewing ads, advertisements instead of herself. And as time went on, they took more and more of her life away for the ads, right? It's just like on the internet. So, I mean, any kind of cyborg body that they transferred you into probably was created and partially owned. It would be very expensive by some company, right? And it will be hooked up with some network. And right there, you're open to be hacked or taken advantage of. So even aside from the question of soul, there's assuming that the soul could transfer, you'd become a slave, potentially a digital slave to whatever created the vehicle.
So that's very good. And actually in many sci-fi programs, you can see like it was in SG-1, one episode that was in, and I think in some of the Star Trek, when somebody had to do it for medical reasons and what happened. So that's a very good example of this. But what I wanted to say also as somebody who studied religions and history of philosophy and Christian philosophy, that at least from a theological perspective, you cannot really lose the soul. So you would think it is positive, right? But no, you have to give up your soul willingly. So you have to give up your soul willingly. So this is what I think we are actually in danger of giving up our souls willingly with the promise of, immortality, for example, right? You just transfer yourself from one robotic and, you can be a total babe, who doesn't want to be, right? Or, the hunk, you can change your body. And so you have to give up in theological, most traditions, if not all, you have to give up your soul willingly. And this is really interesting. And this is what, other mythologies talk about. It is our soul must be of amazing value because they really want it. You know what I mean? They really want it. So, and we are willing to give it up, because for superficial reasons, right? So I would be very careful, but it's just, of course, my research and my opinion.
But also,
what do they do with the souls? They collect them. They like trading cards. Like baseball cards.
But let's get back to the goddess because I think that's important. The goddess not just only has the message, but the stories are all there because again, you give the warning. You have, in the Pistis Sophia, when Sophia falls because of her disobedience, she starts turning into an Archon, a mechanistic being. She even says, "I've become like the counterfeit spirit." Counterfeit spirit was always the Gnostic answer to becoming a machine-like Borg. Yeah. And she still is able, like you said, she still has her divine spark, which saves her in the end. And Inanna falls down and she becomes a piece of meat hung up there. It's like, oh, she's dead. But she remembers, you said her servant remembers. So these goddesses, which symbolize undivided consciousness, but their stories are also our stories, that no matter how we fall into the mechanistic world, we can ascend, right? We can
Yes.
remember. We don't have to lose it all.
So I think this is actually the core of the book, because that's why it's part 3, because it shows the way out. But it also shows that this mythologies, which are not just mythologies, because they are sometimes confused with legends. I think this is like some encoded message in human consciousness that is really important. So as you said, I start with Inanna, because she's the first one that we know in the Descent of Inanna that she falls. And first of all, she's in each story, whether we talk about Inanna, Eleusinian Mysteries, or where we talk about Pistis Sophia, which blew my mind. I hope we can have the time to talk about it.
Sure.
Because I think because there are many misconceptions about the thing. So in each case, they were duped, they were tricked. They thought that, it's just innocent play or something. They're just going to somebody's funeral, not a big deal, right? And then, like Inanna at the gates, she has to, they said, you can come in, but you have to give up all of your powers, right? So there are 7 gates, and in each gate she gives up all of her powers, and eventually she doesn't even know who she is. And the only reason why she managed to come back from the dead, it is because her faithful servant Ninshibur, she's beating the drums, and she's like, because she said, if I never come back, you make sure that people don't forget me. And she goes from one Anunnaki, very interesting again, UFO kind of Anunnaki god, to another, and eventually got Enki sends help. But even through, she manages to bring her back. At the gates again, there are the Galas, and the Galas are the imposters that convinced Inanna and everybody that they're actually powerful, but they are not powerful. So they convince her that she has to give up something really important for herself before she can come back. So there are always these imposters, that convince us that they are very powerful and we have to give up something that is very valuable to us. And I believe that when we talk about it, to think about this uniting consciousness, which I call goddess consciousness, but it could be Christ consciousness, whatever you're comfortable with, that actually we gave up and continue to give up because of our fascination with technology and a rational mathematical mind. And I'm not against science and reasoning and logic. I think we have to marry both, right? We cannot live without that other part. So then Pistis Sophia, right? Because maybe we just should move to Pistis Sophia. So what a wild ride. I think this is the most wild piece of work ever read. And I just started to read it and I felt like I am having a headache on page 1, just
brutal. Yes,
like
yes.
my mind, I can't, So, because just to simplify it, okay, Jesus just rocks up for 11 years after his resurrection and talks to his disciples for 11 years, right? So that's already kind of wild. And he's talking about how he's going through different eons, right, from one to another. And I decided I focus on chapters 28 to 82 because they talk about Sophia, right? So Sophia there. So what I found really interesting and related to what I would think AI and giving up a very important part of consciousness with Sophia, because she's Eon 13, which is actually very interesting because 13 is a number of a goddess, so this is that's why it was kind of made as unlucky because, goddess had to be in this form of consciousness forgotten. So she's on Eon 13 and she looks below, I'm just oversimplifying, so please forgive me because it's very complex. And she thinks, because she's like all of us, she wants to evolve, right? She wants to be enlightened, join with a higher light, right? Because she's aware of it, this higher light exists. And she's convinced by lower forces that are lower than herself, that they are superior.
They're the Gala, the Archons.
Yeah, they are the Gala.
They're Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel.
Sam Altman, Peter Thiel. This is the good stuff. This is actually the higher light. And she willingly, like all other goddesses, she willingly goes down. Okay, so she makes a wrong judgment for which she pays a huge price. She goes down. And it is very interesting, and that's why I think we have to connect it back to the concept of the soul, and the important part of our consciousness, which is not rational and logical just. It is that they want what she's got. And this is what I'm saying. They want what we've got. We are the hot stuff, the messy humanity with all of its emotions, with all of this. We have the divine spark, and Gnostics knew it. And because the lower beings on a material level want what Sophia has, right? And Sophia is our story. So they bring her down, and in her horror, she realizes her mistake. And she's lots of wailing there. So I thought, oh my goodness, she keeps wailing and wailing, so for all of us, lots of wailing. But this wailing is good because it reminds her that something is wrong. She says, why am I so discontented? What's wrong? I'm going in the wrong direction, right? And they are imprisoning me. And then eventually, as Miguel mentioned, she realizes I have become like them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have become like them. And of course, she's talking about the lion-faced,
our friend.
right? So it's them, which I think is really good. But because what in Inanna's myth, her servant was reminding the world of Inanna, she herself here, Pistis Sophia, remembers, that this is not right, that she actually belongs somewhere else. She's trapped in the lower levels of consciousness that she's not supposed to be. So she is wailing and she's begging for help. And eventually Christ consciousness, or Jesus, who is called her pair, comes down. But it's very interesting. I think we have to listen to this, because although after lots of torments he helps her, he too, right, has to be really careful because, and I'm quoting, the evil rulers. He has to hide himself from the evil rulers who entrapped and deceived Sophia, and he is protected because he's assuming highly evolved and he has some wrath of light around him and so on. But he has to be careful because even he doesn't want to be recognized by them because of the evil rulers of the world. And eventually, he does save her, and she comes to all kinds of realizations on the way, which is really good. I try to catch it chapter by chapter. I remember something in chapter 54 is very significant happens, because at the beginning she wants revenge. Now she doesn't want revenge anymore. She just wants to ascend, right? She understands that we're just misguided and so on. So it is a very powerful story, which I think is really shows us, the descent into being duped by something lower than ourselves, which I believe it is transhumanism in our case, and giving up what is truly important and what the evil lords want. That's why they trap you. It's not just they just want your stuff. The stuff that they tell you is not important. Yes, so this is I think this is also the warning there.
It's all over. And for the audience, her breakdown of Inanna is my favorite one I've ever read, because Joanna gives you the mythological, the esoteric, 7 veils and the chakras and all. I mean, she gives you everything about Inanna, and you're like, "Ooh, this story was 4,000 years ago. I mean, what an amazing story! Better than anything Hollywood puts out today." And your breakdown of Isis and Persephone, of Sophia, just how this goddess trope, who I agree is an alien being who's always coming to warn us, is really, it's so many great lessons and meditations. And like you said, the lesson is, undivided consciousness must come down. That's, the soulless female, as Plato said, it has to go on its adventure, but we know what happens in all of these stories. And here we are in 2025 in the same exact mess. So check it out. And again, Joanna's Gospel of Mary, again, same story, so powerful, connects it to Jung, to Gnosticism, but I'm putting that in the bonus. After the show for subs, you get another 40 minutes where she breaks down Jung, the shadow, Gospel of Mary, Jesus. So definitely check it out.
Can I just add something to this? So in Inanna, I think it's most explicitly said, actually told that she is, because she's one of the Anunnaki gods, and she comes from far above. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so she's like in the sky, so she comes
Yeah.
down, and the sky gods are there. So, and also how perhaps the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is different embedded in the story, but the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is the one that gives us tools to get out. It basically tells us how we can work on our consciousness to go through different levels of consciousness. And I also explain, if we create AI through different levels of consciousness, as Mary Magdalene explains, or the Gospel of Mary Magdalene explains, it doesn't have to be an evil thing, because it mirrors its creators and the level from which the creators create, right? So in Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there are 4 levels of consciousness, and at the beginning, at the moment, we are acting from the lower levels of consciousness, and we are creating something that is, very dangerous.
Yeah, yes, we are. We are in a lot of trouble, but the solutions are there. Vince, do you want to you want to fire up the phone numbers, and do you have a question?
Okay, fire it up.
Oh, yeah. Please, what's the number in case people? 805-619-8909. It's flashing on the screen if anybody wants to ask Joanna something, but go ahead.
Yeah, no questions from me at this time. I'm not sure if anybody wants to super chat or call us up, but please do. Calls and super chats welcome.
I have a question, which I have to, well, there's a lot of questions, but this one I have to know, which I love one because I'm reading your book and I'm like, I've known Joanna for years and years. Of course, Mary Magdalene, Sophia, Demeter, Isis. I know what cast of characters and Hindu saints are going to come out. And then so I'm like, what the hell? Baba Yaga? Where did that come from? How did the divine, the evil witch, the ugly witch, where you say her vulva is offensive? I'm like, how did she join your pantheon?
Yeah, that's right. And it's actually, can I tell the story? Because we don't have
and your mother's story is incredible. Yes, please do.
So Baba Yaga story, it was really hilarious. And this is when, the liminal spaces come to be, right? So I was like exhausted from, writing. And then I was lying, and then she showed up in my consciousness, believe it or not. And she says she wants to be included in the book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were talking to the other goddesses, and she just invited herself into your life.
Yeah, she says, and I actually had this kind of vision of myself, in her heart. It was very strange, and she was dangerous. Like, she was helping me at this moment, but I knew she can snap, and all is done. So I started to look at Baba Yaga because I was thinking maybe it has to do something with my Slavic background, when it popped up and so on. And it turns out it's a quite interesting thing that Baba Yaga is actually an interesting entity because she was not always seen as this terrible witch, that she was actually a very powerful goddess, and the cauldron actually, but now they say she's cooking like young men in this cauldron. It was actually protecting the world from evil. Yes. So it was like this boundary, so she's keeping the boundary for the world, in the dark forest, so the evil doesn't enter our world. But also in my book, I decided, I had this realization that she's representing other non-human, because actually it says she has non-human parts in her. And I started to think, what is other non-human that is not AI? And I realized, and it broke my heart, that this is the natural world. Vast non-human intelligence for anybody who loves trees or has a dog, or there's this vast intelligence, and she represents this type of non-human intelligence that we are moving away from more and more, right? And eventually she becomes so ugly to us, so threatening to us, that we actually despise her because we are so disconnected from the natural world, and we are increasingly so disconnected from our natural world. And I don't want to give it away, but I think that there's a very powerful ending to this book, which was also came to me in a vision. I'm not going to say it, but when I mentioned this, creation of a hybrid at the end of the first part of the book on UFOs, this hybrid comes back. Okay, so and I think it is really powerful, and I hope you can also explore Baba Yaga, because this is how, the feminine, divine feminine was also misunderstood, and the whole natural world and the vast intelligence behind the natural world was misunderstood. And it's quite interestingly because Baba Yaga by itself doesn't have a, she's just completely her own girl, okay? There's no other goddess. It's not like Artemis could be Diana, you know, like she doesn't exist in any other pantheon. She's just like this wild shamanic goddess. So she's definitely, and she's a big part of the ending of my book.
Yeah, it's amazing. Go ahead, Vance. Is there a phone call?
There certainly is. It's Graham.
Good evening,
Hi
Graham.
there.
What question do you have?
My mother was a big fan of the Marian apparitions in Fatima, and I was curious, what do you think the actual third prophecy of Fatima was? Do you think the Vatican actually revealed the real one? Okay.
I don't know. So actually, I was very reluctant to write about these 3 messages. But when I said I'm writing about messengers and messages, I have to write about it. But it felt a little bit not right for me. Let's put it this way, right? So there are 3 interpretations for the third, 2 major interpretations for the third message, unless you know the other one. One is about that the Pope, there will be attempt on Pope's life, which is kind of convenient, right? Because it did happen. And the other one, that Christianity is going to be persecuted in the 20th century and so on. So it feels kind of lame, you know what I mean? So I think that this entities so yes, the question is, I think that we don't know. Now there are messages kind of floating that there's a 4th message, and I don't know, just people get really excited about it, but everybody's making it up now. But I think my interpretation is, because in my book I also explore my own experiences with the liminal spaces, which, you know, could or could not be abduction, or I don't know. It is that there are entities, including good entities like in Fatima, that try to contact us, and that they pass the messages to us, but for some reason we have a difficulty understanding this message. It is just like the translator in our head is not working well. And there are lots of people who are abductees who actually welcome this experience, you know, not the horrific experiences, but that they understand, and consistently somebody is trying to pass a message, and all they understand, like myself, it is important, but I really didn't know what it was. I just understood it is important. So the positive of this is, I think that, you know, we are not alone on this journey, right? Somebody is looking out for us and is passing good messages to us. And we can only guess what it is at this stage. But we also have discernment. And I see that what's going on at the moment is not a good path for humanity. So it's kind of roundabout answer. So, but thank you for your question.
Yeah, good question. Good question. I like when you did this, Vance, because I was like, millennials and Gen Z wouldn't understand it, so you can get away. Only older generations know what that means.
Yeah.
So true, huh?
Good language for us, right?
All right, thanks, Graham.
Also, yeah, have a good night, Graham. Always good to see you and talk to you. But I guess another person, and I know we're getting past the hour, but I think it's important, is in the I Told You So camp. We've got the goddesses, the visitors, everybody, but also we've got Rudolf Steiner, right? His message is more relevant than ever. Ahriman and Lucifer. So
that's right. So it's very interesting, because when he's talking about the age of Ahriman, you know, that's amazing, because he actually says something really important, that Ahriman, like, you know, in Pistis Sophia and any of his works, will make us believe that his intentions are good. So, and he said that he will tell us that technology, that the salvation is in technology, and that he's been working over several centuries to convince us that this materialistic kind of paradigm, I'm using my own language, of a universe that focuses only on technology and a materialistic universe is actually the only way, you know, like this kind of very basic science, you know, like Newton, you know, the apple falls and we measure how it fell, its gravity, right? I really can't stand Newton, actually. Esoteric ideas, but not his physics. And you know, so Ahriman basically prepares us for generations, actually, for hundreds of years to believe that there's nothing else but just material existence. And then he will come and then impose this kind of technological salvation upon us, and he'll project himself almost like Christ-like figure. I'm here to save humanity. And I think this is also a really important realization for me, because this is exactly where we are. This is where exactly we are prepared, right? Like we live in a very scientific, dogmatic world at the moment, and that, you know, everything is materialistic. And now we have these technoloords who are telling us that they offer us immortality and better life, and, you know, and I do not believe for a moment that this is true.
No, their intentions are not good.
You're talking about science, but if you really look at the most advanced scientists, like the quantum scientists, and, you know, Wolfgang Pauli and Erwin Schrödinger, and like they really knew that, you know, that you know, if you keep scratching down, I mean, quantum physics talks about the interconnectedness of the entire physical universe, and, you know, they knew that what was beyond, I mean, what unifies all the laws of the universe? What creates protons and quarks and all that stuff? Where does that come from? It's not from inside the material universe. They knew, but yet, you know, science has narrowed down, I think. I'm not sure you address that in the book. Do you talk about quantum things, you know,
no, I didn't go
defense
there.
of the soul?
I just say, except for quantum scientists, you know, the science is still very, you know, much on this way. And it's really interesting because, for example, Matthew Fox and Rupert Sheldrake wrote about angels and UFOs. And then, you know, they say that actually what was perceived as angels in the past, that it is photons, it exhibit exactly the same behavior. You know, they can be in several locations at the same time. They are light, they are, you know, and so on. And it's quite interesting that just to wrap up again with UFOs and spirituality and so on, but it's interesting that the angels always say it, and it was my experience, do not be afraid. And then, and, you know, very often during when you have experience, UFO experience, the thing is, do not be afraid. So they actually use, you know, the same phrase, although I guess it's more of a telepathic phrase if there is such thing, you know, like don't freak out, do not be afraid. So it is in itself interesting. So I think that both Diana Pasuka also and Jeff Kripal really are into something with this, right? Although at this moment I'm moving closer towards Jeff Kripal things, because I think it's more into this kind of interdimensional and event in consciousness than anything else.
But Diana, she hasn't taken a stance, or she hasn't. What is her
no,
stance?
No, he doesn't. She doesn't have a stance. She's very much like a classic academic, and she's very good at it.
She's reporting.
I'm just reporting. Some people do this, some people, and, you know, she doesn't take a stand.
Like we were talking, I remember her saying she wished she had never gone down that rabbit hole. Like we talked. Sometimes I wish I hadn't met Elvis or the spirit, or you wish the goddess had left you alone so we could just live our lives, because the toll it takes is a big on mental health, our physical health, everything. So, and I know Diane has gone through that, and
she did, and it's still going, and it's very hard on her, you know, because imagine this community, especially UFO community, and this community is so divided, so you cannot do right? So we are all there together at different levels, right? And but I think that we are all called to do something, including, you know, our audience here, and, you know, people.
Everybody has a holy mission, sacred mission.
So it's a holy mission. We all have a holy mission, and I think it's good to surrender to this mission, and that's my part, you know. So I just want to add a little bit to the conversation, and maybe I didn't speak enough about the goddesses, but it is a very important part of the book. But it's just, you know, it's just so much, right? Going by one myth by another, dissecting.
You explain it through so many different lenses. We couldn't, like I said. We'll have the bonus with Mary Magdalene. And it was 45 minutes that we talked last year, because you could spend an hour with each of the myths and the goddesses and the lessons, and, you know, but at least for the bonus, you will get, Joanna offers the map to get out.
So just to end, I just want to say that may it sound negative, but the third part of the book actually gives a way out. Okay, so it's actually very positive. So we are being warned, but we are not being warned like, oh, now stupid, you're lost. No. And this is the way out. Okay, so this wisdom of this ancient traditions is just amazing, and I'm in complete awe of it. So as much toll as it took, I've been very happy to to be able to explore it with the spirit.
With the spirit, yes. It's an incredible book. I highly recommend it. Easily one of my favorites, and this is something that I am going to come back over and over again, because again, you've got chapters where you break down Rupert Sheldrake's critique of science, and again, the different myths, and there's just a lot going on, and then it just works together, because again, you're going UFOs, AI, God, ancient goddess, Gnostics. What is it? This is crazy. Baba Yaga, but it all just comes together perfectly at the end.
Thank you so much, Miguel. It means a lot. It means a lot.
Yeah, and it's a tight book. It's not a long book. You could have written 400 pages, but it's a good read, a good tight read.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show and helping me to get, because the book was released only 4 days ago, so I almost I'm still in it, kind of, right? So
you're still too much in it. Yeah,
I don't even have distance to it yet, right? So thank you so much.
Oh, of course, it's always awesome to talk to you. For the audience, yes, check out the show notes. I got Joanna's website, the link to her book. Definitely check out her Instagram, because I was like, oh, this is a good reminder. Great little videos you're putting out. I hope you keep putting them out. They're great. But yeah, we are at the end again. Get the bonus where Joanna talks about the map. Please support Aeon Byte. As many of you know, the YouTube and podcast algorithms have been out of control. All creators have lost 30-40% of their traffic, regardless of who you are. But it's a tough time to be an independent creator. And yes, like I said, the AI and the Archons are just hitting back. But we shall overcome and we shall win. So first of all, Vance, thanks for keeping us company in this Black Mirror.
Oh, this is fantastic. I wish I was more spot on with questions tonight. Just been distracted by things and so forth, but one of my favorite things. And Joanna, I hope your book reaches many, many people and you're successful with it. It sounds great.
Well, again, it doesn't matter. It's already been written in the stars. Joanna is not relevant, just like I'm not relevant, right?
We're all irrelevant.
I just surrendered because, yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I hope so anyway.
Yeah.
In my universe, I hope, I declare that it will be great. There you go.
Thank you. May force be with us. Yes.
The force be with us. All right, everyone. Well, great. Thanks for joining us, Joanna, as always. We look forward to our next chat. Obviously, you and I talk all the time when we're not buried in our books and our divine madness. As Plato said, the muse or Apollo or Dionysus will invade you, and that's it. You're the enthusiast.
That's right. Yeah.
When you were taken by the gods. So awesome. Well, for everybody else, great shows coming next week. Chris Knowles will be joining to Gen X Wasteland to talk about the X-Files and other great shows on the way. So until then, have a good weekend. And again, stay conscious and regain your consciousness, and don't let Ahriman win. Take care, everybody. Thank you.